When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello, welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be talking about George R.R. Martin and if he should have some writers finish the series of A Song of Ice and Fire. And so this has kind of come up a lot in streams. It's kind of come up on the A Song of Ice and Fire, I guess, discourse and fandom. And because we've had such a long gap in between the last book and Winds of Winter, it kind of feels like George R.R. Martin has been putting off writing Winds of Winter, or he's either stuck, or he just isn't flat out interested in it as much as he is in other projects that he believes are cementing his legacy. So yeah, before we get further into this topic, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment for more of this type of content, please do. And let's get into it. So I may have a different approach to this than how a lot of other people will when it comes to George R.R. Martin's decision to not let other people write his book and finish his story, even though he might not have the same love or dedication to it that he had initially when he was doing kind of like the first 3 books. And so I want to take this from George's POV and then look at it from kind of like the fan POV and maybe like my POV. So from George's POV, I want to try to take this from, okay, this is a guy that has spent over 20 years, on 25, 30 years of his life on this series. And so when you're asking that same guy to hand over really his story to other writers, that's a lot to ask. Now, yes, George is still alive, so George could, be really in depth with the process, approving what he likes about what those certain writers are doing. Because we know that, again, George has a team of writers around him. But again, does he have faith in them to continue his story? That's a big ask. And so when I look at it from that point of view, we've already seen that George has handed over his story once, and that was Game of Thrones. That didn't turn out so good. Now, again, different circumstances. One is a television show, the other one is a book. And we also see that, again, the TV show directors, D&D, just did not have the same love and passion for A Song of Ice and Fire that's needed to continue the story with Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. So I think one part of it for George would be just the trust factor of, can I trust somebody else or a group of other people to finish my story? And so there's that part of it. Now, another part of it is the idea of pride. Can you imagine, again, doing something that you have spent 25 to 30 years of your life doing, and then having it really not all be yours, having somebody else finish it? It's a lot to ask, in my opinion. And I'm going to kind of do my example that I always give for this when people ask this on stream or I see this in comments is, if I personally, right, I am doing a Song of Ice and Fire reread. I'm very proud of it. It doesn't do that well on YouTube, but that's okay. It's kind of one of my passion projects that's not really for views or anything like that. I just really enjoy doing it. But that series inherently takes a lot of work. It's some of the stuff that takes the most amount of work on this channel. And so if I eventually, let's say a few years down the road, I was, getting to A Dance of Dragons, right? Getting to the last book before Winds, and I all of a sudden just was getting too busy with things, and I just didn't have maybe the same motivation that I did when I was doing the first book as I did to do the 5th book. Would I feel right handing that over to, say, somebody else? Like, say I had a partner on this channel and they took over that series. How would I feel about that? Because now it's like, it's not my project anymore, right? Like, yes, my name will be to it. I was a big part of it, but it's not mine anymore. And then the other factor that I want to throw into this from George's point of view, POV, is Winds of Winter has been hyped up to be this book that should be one of the greatest of all time. I think it's one of the most anticipated books right now. And so if the book is not really good, people are going to dive off of the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. I mean, think about it like this. You've been waiting this long, and if that book is even mediocre, why would you wait another 10 years for Dream of Spring? Now, maybe I think people have thought after Winds, Dream of Spring should be much easier to write, which I kind of agree with. But it's a lot of pressure to then put onto a bunch of younger writers that may not have the same interpretation as he does. And that's another part of this where my views, say on my Song of Ice and Fire reread, are going to be different than somebody else's, right? If Preston Jacobs came and did my Song of Ice and Fire reread, obviously we would have different like ideas for the series. And so that's the whole idea with George is it's like, yes, you can ask him as many things as you want as you're, trying to finish his story, but you're not George. You don't inherently have every plot line where you want these characters to maybe end up or go or what you want them to go through. You're having to kind of make that up and have George kind of approve of it or give you a general outline of where he would want you to go with it. And so where I'm getting with this is, would the series be as satisfying if someone else did it and it wasn't George? And so that's going to come to, again, my point of view of, would I want another team of writers to finish the story instead of George? And inherently, it's a difficult question to ask because it's a very risky proposition. George, in my opinion, is one of the greatest writers of all time. Now, I can't say he's, as good as Tolkien, for instance, or some of these other great writers because he hasn't finished his main series. But when you look at the way that George is able to create great characters, I've kind of done a series on this, the way he's able to build a story, world building, all of these things, he's fantastic. Could someone or a team of people come in and replicate that? Is something that I don't know if that's possible. And so if I was to get Winds of Winter and it was not nearly up to the quality that I think George would do it, is it really like we're even getting Winds of Winter or A Dream of Spring? It would be like me making a fan fiction at that point. But again, these writers would have more knowledge, so it'd hopefully be better than that. But that's kind of my point here, is that when I look at it from George's point of view, when I really sit back and think about it, and you kind of come to this idea, well, if he gives it to another group of writers, we're taking it out of George's hands. Now, yes, maybe all the signs point to George isn't going to be able to get it done. But in my opinion, I'd still rather have George do it. If George doesn't do it, oh well. I don't think a group of writers is going to come in and be able to hold A Song of Ice and Fire up to that standard. I don't want A Song of Ice and Fire to be one of those series where, you have your original writer and it's really good, and then you get to when the original writer stopped doing it and it kind of dips in quality and it kind of becomes irrelevant at that point. That's not what I want for A Song of Ice and Fire. And so it's a really difficult ask for me. I'm someone that has the first Dune book. I've heard that a lot of people love Dune, but they don't love the sequels after. Like the first Dune book, excellent. The ones after, not good. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but that's not what I want A Song of Ice and Fire to kind of become if we were to have a secondary writing. And how even would the tones and things change when you implement a completely new writer? And that's what I think is the interesting part about it. Again, let me know what your guys' thoughts are, because from a fan base perspective, again, you guys, people watching this video, anyone in this community, we want Winds of Winter. And so maybe it's worth it. Even if it does dip in quality a little bit, hey, we get to at least have George R.R. Martin has confirmed he's got at least 50 to 60% of the book done. At least we're going to get, a portion of what George R.R. Martin has been writing in the last 12 years. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we have a team of writers, they come up, finish what George has done, and maybe it won't be that noticeable that it's a different writer. That could be true. There's just so many question marks that are surrounding if a new team of writers did it, and it's very risky. And that's, I don't know, that's the thing, is like, if George, I hope does not happen, but if he was to, die, in the next few years and Winds of Winter still isn't out, how is that going to go, right? Like if a new, that I would be much more open to a new team of writers doing it then when George has passed, because then it's like, well, if he doesn't do it, if a team of writers doesn't do it, we'll never get it. So I don't know. And maybe they would be more keen to his insights, things that he wanted to do, because again, they're going to have access to him. I don't know. I just think it's an interesting idea, but let me know what you guys think about a team of writers doing A Song of Ice and Fire and finishing the series. And I will see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.